The headlines exploded across social media within minutes, and fans could barely believe what they were reading. After years of rumors, arguments, and public reconciliations, the marriage between Rasheeda and Kirk Frost had finally reached its breaking point. When Rasheeda officially filed for divorce, many people thought they had already seen the worst of the drama. But what happened next shocked even the most devoted followers of their turbulent relationship. Because just hours after the divorce settlement papers surfaced, Kirk Frost dropped a bombshell accusation that no one saw coming. According to Kirk, Rasheeda didn't just walk away from the marriage, she walked away with something else, something worth $9 million. And suddenly, the story that fans thought they understood completely flipped upside down. Sources close to the couple say tensions had been boiling behind the scenes for months. Friends whispered that the divorce wasn't as peaceful as it appeared in public. There were arguments over business deals, ownership of companies, and financial accounts that had been quietly building pressure between the two. But when Kirk allegedly discovered what he claims Rasheeda had done with the money, emotions ran high and everything exploded into chaos. Kirk was furious, one insider reportedly said. He felt completely blindsided, but Rasheeda's camp quickly pushed back, insisting that the accusations were nothing more than desperate attempts to control the narrative. And that's where things get even messier, because now the couple's inner circle is speaking out. Family members are taking sides, and fans are left wondering who is telling the truth. Did Rasheeda really take $9 million from Kirk Frost? Or is this the latest chapter in one of reality television's most dramatic relationships? What started as a divorce filing has suddenly turned into a financial scandal. And the shocking details behind this alleged $9 million mystery are only just beginning to surface. The moment the divorce filing hit the public records, the internet exploded. Fans who had followed Rasheeda and Kirk Frost for years thought they had already witnessed every twist their marriage could possibly produce. Cheating scandals, emotional confrontations, awkward reconciliations on television, and endless debates across social media had made their relationship one of the most talked about in reality TV history. But what no one expected was that the divorce itself would ignite an even bigger storm. Inside sources say the day Rasheeda filed the paperwork was unusually quiet at Frost Bistro in Atlanta. Employees noticed that Kirk had been on his phone almost non-stop, pacing between the office and the bar area with a look on his face that people later described as pure disbelief. One employee whispered to another, "Something is definitely wrong with Kirk today." But what no one inside the restaurant knew was that just hours earlier Kirk had received information that would completely change the way he looked at his entire marriage. According to a close associate of the Frost family, Kirk had been reviewing financial statements related to several of the businesses he and Rasheeda built together over the years. Their empire included multiple ventures, music royalties, and joint investments that had quietly grown into a fortune worth tens of millions of dollars. At first, Kirk thought there had been some kind of accounting mistake. A transfer had been made from one of the main holding accounts tied to their business portfolio. The number was so large it immediately caught his attention. $9 million. Gone. Kirk reportedly stared at the screen for several seconds before calling his financial manager. "What is this transfer?" he asked. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Sir, the transfer was authorized through an account that required dual approval," the manager explained carefully. Kirk felt his stomach drop. Dual approval meant that either he or Rasheeda had to sign off on the movement of funds. And Kirk knew one thing for certain. He had not approved anything. That was the moment when confusion turned into suspicion. Sources say Kirk immediately began making calls, trying to figure out exactly when the transfer had been processed and where the money had gone. The answers only made the situation more complicated. The transaction had taken place just weeks before Rasheeda filed for divorce, and according to the financial documentation, the receiving account was linked to a private investment structure that Kirk claimed he had never seen before. By the time Kirk arrived at Frost Bistro that afternoon, he was already convinced something serious had happened. Witnesses say he looked furious. One staff member later revealed that Kirk walked straight into the office and shut the door behind him so hard the walls shook. Inside that office, multiple phone calls were made, some to lawyers, some to financial advisors, and one call that insiders say lasted nearly 20 minutes. That call was to Rasheeda. No one heard the entire conversation, but several employees claim Kirk's voice could be heard through the office walls. "Why would you do this?" Kirk shouted at one point. A pause followed. Then Rasheeda's voice faintly echoed through the phone speaker. "Kirk, you need to calm down." But calm was the last thing Kirk Frost was feeling. $9 million had disappeared from an account connected to their shared businesses, and according to him, the only other person who could authorize that transfer was the woman who had just filed for divorce. "You think I wouldn't find out?" he said angrily. Rasheeda reportedly responded with a tone that surprised even Kirk. "That money belongs to me too," she said. Those words only poured gasoline onto the fire. Belonged to her. In Kirk's mind, that explanation made absolutely no sense. The businesses were structured through multiple legal agreements, and large withdrawals were supposed to go through financial review before being moved. According to Kirk's side of the story, none of that happened. Instead, $9 million had quietly moved out of the account weeks before the divorce filing became public. The more Kirk investigated, the more questions started piling up. Why had the transfer been made so suddenly? Why had no one from their financial team alerted him? And most importantly, where exactly had the money gone? But the situation became even more explosive later that evening when members of the Frost family began hearing rumors about the financial dispute. One family member reportedly confronted Kirk directly. "Is it true Rasheeda took the money?" they asked. Kirk didn't hesitate. "Yes," he said, "and I'm going to prove it." Those words quickly spread through the inner circle of friends and relatives, who had watched the couple struggle through years of public drama. Some people immediately sided with Kirk, believing that the timing of the transfer looked suspicious. Others defended Rasheeda, insisting that she had every right to access money connected to businesses she helped build. Fans online were equally divided. Within hours, social media was flooded with speculation. Did Rasheeda secretly move $9 million before filing for divorce? Or was Kirk exaggerating the situation to make himself look like the victim? As the rumors spiraled, Rasheeda remained completely silent. No posts, no statements, nothing. And that silence only made the story grow louder. Because behind the scenes, Kirk Frost was preparing to do something that would send the entire situation into a level of drama no one was prepared for. He was ready to take the fight public. And when he finally spoke out about the missing $9 million, the fallout would shake their family, their businesses, and their fans in ways no one could have imagined. The next morning, Kirk Frost woke up with one thought repeating in his mind, over and over again. $9 million. Sources close to him say he barely slept. The financial statements were still sitting open on his laptop. And throughout the night, he had reread the transaction details so many times that the numbers felt burned into his memory. But the more he looked at the documents, the more determined he became. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about betrayal. By early morning, Kirk had already called his legal team. The conversation was serious, tense, and filled with questions that no one yet had clear answers for. His attorney asked one simple thing. "Kirk, are you absolutely sure you didn't authorize this transfer?" Kirk didn't hesitate. "I'm 100% sure." The lawyers explained that if Rasheeda had moved the funds using a shared business authorization, the situation could quickly turn into a complicated legal battle rather than a simple accusation. But Kirk wasn't interested in technical explanations. According to insiders, he believed Rasheeda had deliberately planned the move before filing for divorce. And that belief was about to push the drama into the public spotlight. Later that afternoon, Kirk sat down with a close friend who had been part of his inner circle for years. The friend had watched the ups and downs of Kirk and Rasheeda's marriage from the beginning. When Kirk showed him the documents, the room reportedly went quiet. "You're telling me she took $9 million right before filing the divorce?" the friend asked. Kirk nodded slowly. "Exactly." The friend leaned back in his chair. "That's not just divorce drama," he said. "That's war." And within hours the story started leaking. First it appeared in small gossip blogs. Then entertainment pages began repeating the claim that Kirk Frost was accusing Rasheeda of secretly transferring $9 million before filing for divorce. Fans were stunned. For years Rasheeda had been seen as the calm and level-headed one in the relationship. Many people remembered how she stood by Kirk during his own scandals and controversies. Now suddenly the narrative seemed to flip. Comment sections filled with thousands of reactions. Some fans wrote that Kirk was trying to blame Rasheeda to distract from his own past mistakes. Others said the timing of the money transfer looked suspicious. Emotions ran high across social media. But the real explosion happened when Kirk himself finally addressed the rumors. During a private gathering with friends and business associates, Kirk reportedly spoke openly about what had happened. Someone in the room asked him directly, "Did Rasheeda really take $9 million?" Kirk didn't try to soften his answer. "Yes, she did." The room fell silent. He continued speaking, his voice filled with frustration. "For years, we built businesses together. We built brands together. And now all of a sudden money disappears right before the divorce papers show up." People sitting nearby exchanged nervous glances. because everyone in that room understood that, if the accusation was true, the fallout would be massive. But across town, Rasheeda was hearing the rumors too. Friends say she had been avoiding social media since the divorce filing became public, focusing instead on her businesses and spending time with close family. But when the accusations about the $9 million started spreading, she could no longer ignore the situation. One of her closest friends reportedly visited her home that evening. "You need to see what's happening online," the friend said. Rasheeda sighed. "What now?" The friend showed her several articles on their phone, headlines accusing her of secretly taking $9 million. Rasheeda read the screen slowly, her expression growing colder with every line. "So this is what Hayes doing now," she said quietly. According to the friend, Rasheeda wasn't shocked by the accusation. Instead, she seemed almost annoyed. "He knows exactly what that money is for," she reportedly said. The friend looked confused. "Then why is he telling people you stole it?" Rasheeda didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood up and walked toward the window, staring out into the dark Atlanta skyline. "Because Hayes trying to control the story," she finally said. And that statement hinted at something far more complicated behind the missing $9 million. While Kirk believed the transfer was suspicious, Rasheeda reportedly had a completely different explanation. And that explanation involved business agreements that dated back years. But the public didn't know any of that yet. All they knew was that the once famous couple was now locked in a financial dispute that seemed to grow bigger by the hour. Inside their family, the tension was becoming impossible to ignore. One relative reportedly called Kirk directly. "Man, you two are really doing this in public now," they said. Kirk sounded exhausted. "I didn't start this," he replied. But the relative pushed back. "Maybe not, but it's getting ugly." Kirk didn't deny it, because the truth was that the entire situation was spiraling beyond anyone's control. Friends began taking sides. Some believed Kirk had every right to demand answers about the money. Others argued that Rasheeda had been a major part of building their businesses and could access funds if she needed to. The family was left divided. But just when fans thought the drama couldn't get any more intense, another twist appeared. Late one evening, an anonymous source connected to the couple's financial circle spoke to a popular entertainment blog. The source claimed the $9 million transfer had been connected to a private investment account that Rasheeda had been developing for months. According to the report, the account wasn't hidden. It was simply structured in a way Kirk hadn't been actively involved in. That revelation immediately fueled a new wave of speculation. Was Rasheeda actually planning a business move rather than secretly taking money? Or was the anonymous source trying to protect her reputation? The internet exploded with theories. Some fans pointed out that Rasheeda had always been known as a smart businesswoman. Others argued that the timing was still suspicious, because no matter how the money was explained, the transfer happened shortly before the divorce filing. And that detail continued to raise questions. Meanwhile, Kirk Frost was growing increasingly frustrated with the way the story was evolving. According to insiders, he felt that people were trying to minimize what had happened. One evening he reportedly met with several close associates to discuss the situation. "I'm telling you right now," he said firmly, "this isn't just a misunderstanding." One of the associates asked him a difficult question. "Kirk, are you sure there isn't something about that investment you didn't know?" Kirk shook his head. "No." But even as he said those words, some people in the room wondered if the truth might be more complicated than either side was admitting. Because marriages that last as long as Kirk and Rasheeda's rarely collapse over just one issue. Years of tension, secrets, and financial disagreements often build quietly beneath the surface. And according to people close to the couple, their relationship had been carrying that kind of pressure for a long time. One longtime friend revealed that arguments about business decisions had been happening for months before the divorce. They were both strong personalities, the friend explained. Both of them believed they were right about how things should be run. Sometimes, those conversations got heated, very heated. Those tensions reportedly intensified as their businesses continued expanding. New investments, new partnerships, and increasingly complicated financial structures. All of it required trust. And when trust begins to crack, even small misunderstandings can turn into massive conflicts. By the end of that week, the story had become one of the most talked about topics in entertainment gossip. Every blog had a different version. Every fan had a different opinion. Some insisted Kirk was telling the truth. Others believed Rasheeda was being unfairly targeted. But behind the scenes, something even more shocking was about to happen. Because Rasheeda was finally preparing to speak. And according to people close to her, when she revealed her side of the story, the entire $9 million mystery would take a dramatic turn that no one saw coming. The moment word spread that Rasheeda was preparing to respond, the atmosphere around the entire situation shifted. For days the internet had been flooded with Kirk's accusations. Speculation about the missing $9 million, and endless debates among fans trying to piece together what really happened. Now everyone was waiting to hear from the one person who had remained completely silent. Inside Rasheeda's inner circle the mood was serious. Close friends had gathered at her home that evening, phones buzzing non-stop with notifications from reporters, bloggers, and fans demanding answers. One friend looked up from her phone and sighed. "This story is everywhere now," she said. Rasheeda leaned back in her chair calmly. "I figured it would get this big," she replied. Another friend asked the question everyone was thinking. "So what are you going to say?" Rasheeda paused for a moment before answering. "I'm going to tell the truth." But according to insiders, the truth Rasheeda was preparing to reveal was very different from the version Kirk had been telling. Because in her mind, the $9 million wasn't stolen. It was earned. And that explanation traced back years before the divorce filing ever happened. Late that night, Rasheeda reportedly spoke with her attorney and financial advisor in a long private meeting. Documents were laid across the table, outlining business agreements, ownership percentages, and investment structures connected to the companies she and Kirk had built together. Her financial advisor pointed to one particular section of the documents. "This is the agreement from 3 years ago," he explained. Rasheeda nodded slowly. "Exactly." According to the advisor, the agreement allowed certain funds from joint ventures to be allocated toward independent investments managed by either partner, as long as the investment remained connected to their shared business portfolio. In other words, the transfer wasn't necessarily illegal. But the situation became complicated because Kirk claimed he had never approved the specific investment Rasheeda was making. The advisor sighed. "Legally, this is going to become a very messy argument." Rasheeda folded her arms. "He's the one who decided to turn it into a public scandal," she said. "If he wants the truth out there, then the truth will come out." While Rasheeda prepared her response, Kirk was dealing with a storm of his own. Although many fans initially supported his accusations, the anonymous report about the investment account had created new doubts. People were beginning to question whether the situation was more complex than it first appeared. One evening, Kirk met with several family members at a private gathering. The room was tense. One relative spoke first. "Kirk, we need to understand something," they said. "Did Rasheeda really steal the money, or is this business stuff getting twisted?" Kirk looked frustrated. "I'm telling you the transfer happened without my knowledge," he replied. Another relative leaned forward. "But she's saying it was connected to an investment agreement." Kirk shook his head. "If that's true, then why didn't she talk to me about it?" The question hung in the air. Because for a marriage that had lasted years, communication about money had always been one of their biggest challenges. Another family member finally spoke. "Maybe both of you stopped trusting each other a long time ago." No one responded to that comment, because deep down, everyone in the room suspected it might be true. Over the next several days, tensions between the two camps continued rising. Friends and business partners quietly chose sides. Some defended Kirk fiercely, saying that a $9 million transfer without clear communication was unacceptable. Others supported Rasheeda, pointing out that she had helped build the businesses that generated the money in the first place. Fans were equally divided. Social media debates became heated. Some users wrote that Kirk was playing the victim. Others insisted Rasheeda had planned the move before filing for divorce. Emotions ran high everywhere. But then came the moment that changed everything. During a private business event in Atlanta, Rasheeda was approached by a reporter who asked the question everyone had been waiting to hear. "Did you take $9 million from Kirk Frost?" The room grew quiet. People nearby stopped talking. Rasheeda looked directly at the reporter. "I didn't steal anything," she said calmly. Whispers immediately spread through the crowd. She continued speaking, her voice steady. "That money came from businesses I helped build, businesses I worked on for years, and the investment it went into is still connected to those businesses." The reporter pressed further. "So you're saying Kirk knew about it?" Rasheeda paused briefly before answering. "He knew the agreement existed." Those words instantly ignited a new wave of controversy. Because if what Rasheeda said was true, then the situation wasn't about theft, it was about interpretation. The legal documents would determine whether the transfer was justified or not. When Kirk heard about her statement, sources say he was furious. He reportedly called one of his lawyers immediately. "Did you hear what she said?" he demanded. The lawyer had already seen the reports. "Yes, we did." Kirk's voice rose with anger. "She knows exactly what she's doing." According to insiders, Kirk believed Rasheeda was carefully framing the story to make the situation sound like a simple business disagreement. But in his mind the issue was much deeper. Because he believed the timing of the transfer proved that something had been planned before the divorce filing. You don't move $9 million and then file for divorce. A few weeks later, without thinking about it, first he reportedly told a friend. Meanwhile, Rasheeda supporters began speaking more openly. One longtime friend appeared on a small entertainment podcast and defended her strongly. People are acting like Rasheeda just walked into a bank and stole money, she said. That's not what happened. She explained that Rasheeda had been involved in building multiple ventures with Kirk for years and had earned a significant financial stake in their empire. The internet immediately reacted. Fans started digging through old interviews and business records, trying to understand exactly how their companies were structured. Some discoveries surprised people. Rasheeda's name appeared on many of the official business filings, which meant the financial relationship between the couple was far more intertwined than many fans realized. As the days passed, the drama only intensified. Lawyers on both sides began preparing for what insiders described as a potential legal battle over financial rights and ownership. Family members tried unsuccessfully to calm the situation. One relative reportedly called both Kirk and Rasheeda separately. "You two built too much together to destroy everything like this," they said. But by that point, the conflict had taken on a life of its own. The public accusations, the media attention, the divided fan reactions, all of it made reconciliation seem less and less likely. Yet another shocking twist was still waiting to emerge, because during the ongoing financial review, Kirk's legal team reportedly discovered something unexpected within the same investment structure tied to the $9 million. According to an insider familiar with the investigation, the account wasn't just holding the transferred funds. It had already begun generating returns through several new business partnerships. In other words, the investment Rasheeda made was already growing. When Kirk heard about that detail, his reaction reportedly stunned everyone in the room. "Wait a minute," he said slowly. "You're telling me that money is already working in another business deal?" The advisor nodded. Yes, Kirk leaned back in his chair, processing the information, because if the investment turned out to be profitable, the entire narrative surrounding the $9 million could change yet again. What started as an accusation of theft might eventually become something very different, a battle over who had the right to control the future of their shared empire. And as both sides prepared for the next phase of this escalating drama, one thing became clear to everyone watching from the outside. The story of Rasheeda, Kirk Frost, and the mysterious $9 million was far from over. As the weeks passed, what started as a shocking accusation slowly transformed into a full-blown war between two people who once built an empire together. Every conversation between Kirk and Rasheeda now carried tension, and every move either of them made was being watched by fans, media outlets, and even people inside their own circle. The more details surfaced about the $9 million investment, the more complicated the story became. According to sources close to the legal teams, the investment Rasheeda had placed the money into was connected to a new entertainment venture that had quietly been developing for months. The project involved multiple partners, distribution opportunities, and a brand expansion strategy that could potentially generate millions in future revenue. In other words, the money had not disappeared, it had been moved. But Kirk wasn't convinced that explanation made the situation any better. During a tense meeting with his attorneys, he reportedly slammed his hand against the conference table. "Moving $9 million without talking to me first is still a problem," he said. One lawyer carefully responded. "Technically, the agreement does allow certain independent investments." Kirk leaned forward. "But the timing matters." And that was the point, Kirk continued repeating to everyone around him. Because the transfer happened shortly before Rasheeda filed for divorce. To him, that detail changed everything. Across town, Rasheeda was hearing about Kirk's continued accusations, and insiders say she was growing increasingly frustrated. One evening, she met with a small group of friends at her home. The conversation quickly turned to the situation that had now taken over their lives. "He keeps acting like I just took the money and ran," Rasheeda said. One friend shook her head. "People online are saying all kinds of things." Another friend asked quietly, "Do you think he really believes you stole it?" Rasheeda sighed. "I don't know anymore." But what bothered her the most wasn't just the accusation. It was the way the story had divided people around them. Mutual friends were suddenly choosing sides. Business partners were asking uncomfortable questions. Even members of their extended family were becoming involved. The family was left divided. Some relatives defended Kirk strongly, saying the transfer should have been discussed openly before happening. Others supported Rasheeda, reminding everyone that she had worked just as hard building their businesses. The tension was spreading everywhere. Fans were shocked by how quickly the situation had escalated. For years, viewers had watched Rasheeda stand by Kirk through public scandals and humiliating moments. Now the same audience was witnessing the two of them turn against each other in a battle over money and trust. One fan posted online, "This used to be my favorite couple to watch. Now it feels like everything they built together is falling apart." Another wrote, "If she really invested the money, then maybe she was just protecting her future." Thousands of comments flooded every discussion thread, but behind all the public debate, something much more emotional was happening privately, because both Kirk and Rasheeda were beginning to confront a painful truth. Their marriage had been cracking long before the $9 million became an issue. A longtime friend of the couple later revealed that financial disagreements had quietly been building for years. They had different visions about the future, the friend explained. Kirk wanted to expand certain ventures quickly. Rasheeda was more cautious about where the money went. Those disagreements never fully disappeared. They just stayed beneath the surface, until finally everything exploded. Meanwhile, the legal teams continued reviewing documents connected to the controversial transfer. One particular meeting reportedly became extremely tense. Rasheeda's attorney presented records showing the investment structure and the projected growth of the venture connected to the $9 million. The numbers were impressive. If the project succeeded, the initial investment could multiply several times over. Kirk's lawyer studied the documents carefully. Then he looked at his client. If this venture performs the way these projections suggest, the investment could become extremely valuable. Kirk crossed his arms. That still doesn't explain why I wasn't told about it first. And that question remained at the center of the entire dispute, because in business partnerships, communication often matters just as much as legal permissions. A few days later, another unexpected development occurred. A reporter contacted one of the investment partners involved in Rasheeda's project. The partner refused to discuss details, but did make one statement that immediately caught attention. This investment was always intended to benefit the larger brand network, he said, including ventures connected to both parties. That comment caused a wave of confusion online. If the investment was tied to their shared brand network, then technically the money could still be contributing to businesses Kirk was involved with. Fans began debating the situation all over again. Some said the statement proved Rasheeda had acted responsibly. Others argued it sounded like damage control. Meanwhile, Kirk was becoming increasingly tired of the constant speculation. During a private dinner with a few friends, he finally admitted how exhausting the entire situation had become. "This isn't how I wanted things to end," he said quietly. One friend looked at him carefully. "Do you still care about her?" Kirk didn't answer immediately. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "We built too much together not to care." That moment revealed something many people watching the drama had forgotten. Beneath the accusations and legal battles, there were years of shared memories, years of building businesses, years of raising a family. Those things didn't disappear overnight. Yet at the same time, the damage between them was becoming harder to repair. Because once accusations of betrayal enter a relationship, rebuilding trust becomes extremely difficult. One evening, Rasheeda received a message from someone who had known both her and Kirk for years. The message was simple: "Do you two even recognize each other anymore?" Rasheeda stared at the screen for several seconds before putting her phone down. The question stayed in her mind, because the truth was that the situation had grown far bigger than the original argument about money. It had turned into a battle about respect, control, and the legacy of everything they built together. And that battle was far from finished. In fact, insiders say the next stage of the conflict could become even more dramatic, because lawyers on both sides were now preparing financial disclosures related to the divorce settlement. Those disclosures would reveal the full structure of the businesses, investments, and assets the couple had accumulated over the years, which meant the world might soon learn just how much money was truly involved. When Kirk heard about the upcoming financial review, he reportedly told one of his advisors something that made the room go silent. "If everything comes out," he said slowly, "people are going to see the whole picture." The advisor asked carefully, "And what does that mean?" Kirk looked at the documents spread across the table. "It means the $9 million might just be the beginning of this story." And if that prediction turned out to be true, the drama surrounding Kirk Frost, Rasheeda, and their empire could become even more explosive than anyone had imagined. And now the entire situation has left fans with more questions than answers. What really happened between Rasheeda and Kirk Frost behind closed doors? Was the $9 million truly a strategic investment that spiraled into a public misunderstanding? Or was it the final move in a relationship that had already been falling apart for years? One thing is certain: emotions ran high, accusations flew, and the family was left divided as to people who once built everything together suddenly found themselves standing on opposite sides of the same empire. Some fans believe Rasheeda was simply protecting the future she helped build. Others insist Kirk had every right to be furious about a $9 million transfer he says he never approved. And with legal teams now digging deeper into their finances, many people are wondering if even bigger revelations could still come out. Because if the documents and investments continue to surface, the truth behind their businesses, their fortune, and the real story of that mysterious $9 million could completely change the narrative once again. Fans are shocked at how quickly this drama escalated, and social media is still buzzing with heated debates about who is right and who is wrong. Some people say this is the most explosive chapter yet in their long and complicated history. But what do you think really happened? Did Rasheeda secretly move the money before filing for divorce, or is Kirk Frost turning a business decision into a public battle? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because this story is far from over and your opinion matters. And if you want more shocking celebrity drama, unexpected twists, and stories that fans everywhere are talking about, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next big reveal.